But closing arguments are already locked in for early next month, and the jury's going to have a ton to sort through. Everything from Wi-Fi router logs to light control systems, and possibly Brown's own voice recordings. Now, the moment those hallway recordings from Brown were played in court, the trial flipped into high-tech mode instantly. As soon as he was officially locked in as a witness, the courtroom launched straight into the evidence breakdown, starting with Special Agent Lynn Rivas. She's the digital forensics lead, and basically the person who cracked open Brown's hidden phone. For the jury, she mapped it up.
However you look, first check Kayak to compare car rental sites and prices to find a great deal on exactly what you're looking for.
And use that to create an unchangeable, secure copy to examine. And that hash value? It matched across every copy. Even the defense had to admit it was airtight. Still, they tried to poke holes, grilling her on the possibility of preloaded edits. Rivas didn't even blink. She told the jury that her team ran deep waveform analysis. Nothing showed tampering. No audio chops, no weird splices. Even the timestamps lined up perfectly with the system logs from the phone. With that technical groundwork laid, prosecutors dropped the first voice memo into evidence. A clip time-stamped at 1 a.m. from Brown's earliest known visit to one of Diddy's connected properties. And just like that, the courtroom wasn't just listening to testimony. It was stepping right into the timeline. When it comes to jury selection, here's the real shocker. Both the prosecution and the defense are dead set on wrapping it up in just 3 days. Yep, 3. Considering how massive and high-profile this trial is, that confidence is bold, to say the least. Most cases this big take way longer to seat a jury.
Well, one of hip-hop's most popular artists of the 90s died yesterday, known as Heavy D, real name Dwight Arrington Myers.
Heavy D was working on a book before he died. Kim Porter was working on a book.
Buried. In 1996, just months before Tupac's death, he sat down for a 2-hour interview that was supposed to change the narrative. Only 10 minutes made it to the airwaves. The rest, locked away, silenced, sealed, and forgotten by most. But what if that silence wasn't about peace, but power? What if someone had a reason to keep Pac's voice from echoing beyond the grave? This isn't a story about an interview. It's about the gap between what we heard and what we were never meant to. And now, nearly 30 years later, that silence is cracking. The tape didn't vanish. It was withheld. The question is, why? The resurfaced Tupac interview tape.
I believe so. I do believe so. I have to.
Deleted an old tweet from 2017 where he praised Diddy as doing a world of good for these kids. Naturally, fans jumped all over that, with one commenting, "That tweet did not age well," and another quipping,
They will refer to me as Wall Nights. I would have to go and prep that hotel.
Sure didn't know. Already on trial for sex trafficking.
Baby oil, Astroglide, drugs.
Now his personal assistant.
I had to clean up those roads.
New allegations of vile behavior.
It was frightening. His eyes, they were just black.
That's next on 60 Minutes.
Dishonest, violent.
Famous rapper's last photos before dying.
No one cares.
Wanted to be a small business owner. Our goal is to
Of MDC Brooklyn. Now let me paint the picture for you. Diddy was used to waking up in five-star hotels, eating $1,000 steaks, sipping vintage champagne, and living like hip-hop royalty. His last night of freedom, he was reportedly staying at the Park Hyatt Hotel, where the one-bedroom suites start at $3,000 a night. Plush robes, private chefs, the works. Fast forward to now. This man is wearing rubber shoes, eating powdered eggs, and sleeping in a cement box with fluorescent lighting. Baby, this ain't a reality show. This is reality smacking him in the face. And according to sources close to the jail, Diddy is not taking it well. Insiders told the Daily Mail that shortly after his second bail denial, he had a complete emotional meltdown. He started crying, yelling, and begging the guards to let him out, screaming that he didn't belong there, that this was all a mistake, that they were trying to ruin him. That man was spiraling so hard, they thought they'd have to call the psych unit on speed dial. And y'all, he ain't just emotionally spiraling, he's physically shutting down too. Diddy allegedly refused to eat, convinced that someone was trying to poison his food. Sources say he's lost weight, his skin is pale, and he's constantly on edge. This man thinks he's next in line for an Epstein-style exit. And honestly, with the enemies he's made and the secrets he's allegedly keeping, I can't even say he's paranoid without reason. Let me remind y'all, this is the same prison where Epstein died under mysterious circumstances, where Ghislaine Maxwell, R. Kelly, and Sam Bankman-Fried were all held. This place is no joke. It's cold, dirty, violent. And Diddy ain't in no VIP cell. He's the general population now. That means sharing space with bank robbers, gang leaders, murderers, and lifers who would literally end him for street cred. Diddy was already placed on suicide watch during his first few weeks. Now he's being housed in a special house, also known as 24-hour lockdown. No cell, no yard time, no normal inmate interactions. And guess what? Sources say that didn't make him feel safer. It made him feel even more unstable. The isolation, it's eating away at him like termites in a trophy case. In fact, reports claim Diddy begged the court to move him to Essex County Jail in New Jersey, claiming conditions at MDC were inhumane. It gets even darker, y'all. Apparently, Diddy's being visited multiple times a day by a shrink. The man is on 24-hour mental health observation. They even talked about putting him in what's called a bubble cell, basically a clear plexiglass prison cell where other inmates, called cadre inmates, are paid to sit and watch you around the clock to make sure you don't harm yourself. Like, it's giving Truman's Show meets Oz, okay? And here's the most chilling part of all. He thought he'd be out in a week. That's the level of delusion Diddy had. Sources say he truly believed the money, the fame, and the favors would get him released in no time. But now that it's been 6 months, and the judge has officially set no bail for at least 2 years before trial, that reality is crushing him. You can see it in his eyes. He's not Brother Love anymore. He's just Sean. One source said Diddy eventually managed to calm himself down with some kind of meditation technique he picked up. They said he sat in silence for hours, just breathing and trying to escape the mental prison he built for himself long before the physical one. But Chile. Meditation can only do so much when your empire is burning outside those concrete walls. Let's be real. This man ain't just suffering. He's unraveling. He's watching the world turn against him. His empire crumble. His friends are disappearing. His secrets are leaking. And the only thing louder than the silence in his jail cell is the ticking of the clock until his trial. And you want to know what's really haunting? They say the more pressure you put on a man, the more you find out what he's made of. Well, Diddy, looks like the shine was all for show. And now, all that's left is the meltdown. The target on his back. So listen, we've talked about the...
Here in this lab, we're making formulas for plastics that are more sustainable. We know.
LeBron James wasn't supposed to be part of this trial. He wasn't on the witness list. He wasn't part of the legal team. He wasn't even directly tied to the case, or so we thought. But today, in a courtroom packed with press, lawyers, and a visibly nervous jury, his name became the center of a stunning allegation. It started with a glance. Juror number 4, a woman known throughout the trial for her quiet composure, briefly turned her head toward the public gallery. Her gaze locked on someone, and in that split second, every trained eye in the room noticed. Not because of what she did, but because of who she looked at. LeBron James. He was sitting quietly, dressed immaculately, avoiding eye contact with the judge, but clearly aware of every move in the room. Some thought he was there to support Diddy. Others figured he was simply observing as a concerned friend, or maybe even a mentor. But what no one expected, what stopped this trial in its tracks, was the suspicion that LeBron wasn't just watching, he was involved. As murmurs spread, the lead prosecutor paused mid-question. Even the stenographer looked up. The judge leaned forward, glasses in hand, visibly trying to process what he was witnessing. Then came the whisper, soft, but enough to start a wildfire in a room full of tension. He's coaching the jury. No one knew exactly who said it, but once the idea was in the air, it couldn't be taken back. Suddenly, the entire tone of the courtroom shifted. The judge called for an unscheduled recess. Jurors were escorted out immediately, some looking confused, others rattled. Before we dive deeper into this unforgettable video, make sure to like the video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell icon. That way, you'll never miss any new coming videos like this. Now let's get back to it. LeBron stayed seated, motionless, but there was no denying the tension around him. 2 bailiffs positioned themselves closer. Attorneys from both sides rushed into huddles. The gallery, once buzzing with curiosity, now sat in stunned silence. The judge didn't yell. He didn't need to. His cold, surgical tone sliced through the room. We have reason to believe an external party may have interfered with the sanctity of this court. That was it. No name was spoken, but everyone's eyes shifted to the same man, LeBron James. What followed was pure chaos. Reporters ran from the courtroom. Diddy's legal team filed an emergency motion, and court security reviewed surveillance footage from the hallway outside the courtroom. Footage that, allegedly, shows LeBron in conversation with a juror 2 days earlier during a break. Not just a wave, not just small talk, a real intense exchange. No audio, just body language. Leaning in, gesturing, nodding. And then today, juror number 4 locking eyes with him in the middle of testimony. Coincidence or coordination? The judge wasn't ready to answer that just yet. But one thing was clear. This trial had just entered dangerous new territory. The line between courtroom and celebrity circus had been crossed. And at the center of it all, LeBron James. The courthouse cafeteria was unusually quiet that afternoon. But for one court security officer, something stood out. Sitting at a corner table near the window was LeBron James, wearing a hat low over his brow, sipping coffee, and, most importantly, not alone. Sitting directly across from him, dressed in civilian clothes but unmistakably recognizable from the jury box, was juror number 6. No security detail, no media, just the 2 of them. The officer didn't interrupt. He didn't have authority to interfere. LeBron wasn't under any official restriction, but the sight lodged in his mind like a splinter. Later, when whispers of jury interference started echoing through the courtroom, that image returned with alarming clarity. Back in the courtroom, attorneys began revisiting jury selection protocols. How did someone of LeBron's status, with undeniable public influence, gain enough access to jurors to raise red flags? The court's strict no-contact rules were now being questioned. in fast. Even more alarming, anonymous sources from within the courthouse began leaking statements, claiming this wasn't the first time LeBron had interacted with members of the jury. 3 jurors were now under scrutiny for potential outside communication. A pattern was emerging. Had been seen entering the same parking garage as LeBron's SUV after hours. Another report suggested juror number 6 had paused during crosswalk traffic to speak with a man who matched LeBron's voice. None of this was caught on courtroom surveillance, but the tension in the courtroom was undeniable, and the stakes had never been higher. LeBron, for his part, remained eerily calm. His attorneys, yes, he now had 2, filed a motion that same night denying any misconduct. He insisted that any interactions he had were purely social and devastating. Courtroom protocol required immediate inquiry. The note was treated as official evidence. Experts were brought in to analyze Hamlin. The entire jury panel was privately questioned. And then it happened. Juror number 6, same woman seen with LeBron in the cafeteria, broke. Tears welled in her eyes. Her voice trembled. And she admitted that she had, in fact, spoken to a public figure during the trial. She wouldn't say who. She wouldn't confirm that the note was hers. But she did confirm that she felt pressured to protect Diddy's image. The gallery froze. Attorney froze. The judge, he removed his glasses, exhaled slowly, and declared, "This court is dangerously close to collapsing under the weight of external manipulation." LeBron James, still silent, glanced up just once, right at the judge. The message was clear. Whatever had happened behind the scenes, whatever was said, whispered, or promised, it was no longer hidden. The courtroom was now a battleground, not just for Diddy's freedom, but for the very legitimacy of justice itself. The judge's chambers were filled with tension so thick, it felt like breathing was a crime. Phones were off, recorders banned. Only a handful of trusted officials were allowed inside. And at the center of the storm was one question no one ever thought would have to be asked in an American courtroom. Was the most famous basketball player in the world tampering with a federal jury? The judge stared at the table in silence, flipping the anonymous note over and over between his fingers. The prosecution had already called for a mistrial. The defense was panicking, trying to distance Diddy from LeBron entirely. And Diddy himself, normally composed, sat stone-faced, lips pressed so tightly they nearly disappeared. Outside the chamber, the hallway was swarmed with federal agents, not for LeBron yet, but for the jurors. Each one now under review. Juror number 6 had cracked, but she wasn't the only one showing signs of strength. Juror number 2 was pacing so much in the holding room that a court deputy had to intervene. Juror number 4 had requested to be excused from the trial altogether, citing stress and intimidation. The courtroom, once a structured theater of law, had turned into a spectacle. Rumors raced faster than transcripts. Then the judge dropped the bomb. He ordered a forensic review of phone records for every juror, texts, call logs, any digital footprint that could confirm or disprove the allegations of outside influence. It was unprecedented, but no one in that room objected, not anymore. And that's when it got worse. The digital team brought back data from juror number 2's phone. One number stood out, not saved as a contact, just a 310 area code. Dozens of short calls, never more than 30 seconds, and all during off-court hours. Court records showed that number belonged to a burner phone purchased in Beverly Hills 4 days after the trial began. And that burner phone, LeBron's driver had paid for it in cash. Now it was no longer suspicion, it was evidence. The judge's voice dropped an octave as he read the findings out loud in court. Gasps filled the room. Someone in the gallery whispered, "Oh my God." Diddy looked down, running his hand over his forehead. LeBron was now at the center of a legal disaster that could invalidate weeks of testimony. But here's what truly cracked the room open. Juror number 2 was called into the courtroom for a closed-door examination. When asked if he'd spoken to anyone connected to the trial, he replied, "I didn't think it mattered if I didn't tell the others." The judge leaned forward. "Did someone tell you to say that?" A pause, then quietly. "I was told Diddy's life depends on it." The judge's gavel hit the desk hard enough to make everyone jump. His face was flushed, and he immediately called for a suspension of court proceedings until further notice. No verdict could be trusted now. No testimony. The trial was poisoned from within, and the world watched as one of the most respected athletes alive stood accused of doing the unthinkable, helping his friend by hijacking the very system meant to protect the truth. The court resumed the next morning under a different kind of silence, one not of order, but of disbelief. The gallery was full, yet no one dared speak. Even the reporters in the back row, usually whispering notes or snapping reactions, sat frozen. LeBron James was no longer just a presence. He was a shadow looming over every bench, every juror, every question. His legal team now occupied the first row. Their expressions were unreadable, but everyone knew why they were here. The court had summoned LeBron for questioning, not as a witness to the trial, but as a possible contaminator of justice. Diddy didn't speak. He didn't look at LeBron. He kept his head down, elbows on the table, fingers steepled like a man praying for the storm to pass. But it was only beginning. The bailiff stepped forward and handed a sealed envelope to the judge. He opened it slowly, carefully, as if even the paper had weight. Inside were transcripts, dozens of them, pulled from surveillance audio inside the courthouse lobby. The tapes weren't clear enough to be court evidence, but they were enough to prompt inquiry. One clip played in chambers caught the room off guard. It was brief but piercing. A man's voice, low and fast, saying, "Don't push the vote. Let it stall. That's all we need." The voice wasn't confirmed, but the timing aligned with the day LeBron was seen in that exact hallway. The judge called for a special hearing, not to decide guilt, not yet, but to assess whether the entire trial could even go forward. Then it happened. An emergency motion from the prosecution landed like lightning. They were requesting that LeBron James be subpoenaed and put under oath. Not in a press room, not on a podcast. In the courtroom, in front of the judge. In front of the jury he was accused of trying to steer. Defense attorneys fired back instantly, calling it a sideshow, an insult to the process. But their words were thin. No one was buying the denial anymore, because the truth had already started leaking. The jurors were no longer united. Inside sources revealed they were no longer deliberating the evidence. They were debating influence. Words like manipulation, celebrity pressure, and cultural loyalty were floating through the jury room like smoke, choking the integrity out of every discussion. Juror number 7, according to an insider report, had threatened to walk off the panel unless the court addressed the celebrity elephant. And it was LeBron. Not just for who he is, but for what he represents. Influence, power, cultural sway. The courtroom had become infected with a sickness that law can't easily fix. A weight of the world outside its walls pressing in. And then the judge, heavy with disgust and frustration, made a chilling statement. This trial no longer is in isolation. It is now a battlefield of truth, and I will not allow justice to be swallowed by status. There was no applause, no reaction. Just the realization that the trial, once a standard proceeding against a music mogul, had turned into a national crisis, and LeBron James had become its most unexpected weapon. It was the moment everyone had waited for, and no one could believe it was real. The doors at the back of the courtroom opened, and in walked LeBron James. Not in uniform, not on a red carpet, not in a press conference, but into a courtroom as a man under oath. Every camera had been banned, every phone confiscated, no recordings, no flashes, just eyes. And every pair of them looked at him as he walked slowly, deliberately toward the witness stand. He didn't look right. He didn't nod at Diddy. Smile. In the game, this was the weight of everything he had built now hanging in the air above. The clerks, please raise your right hand. On did. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do, he said, voice low but firm. And then silence again, because the prosecution wasn't starting slow. They didn't care who he was. The judge had made it clear, celebrity means nothing in this courtroom anymore. You've attended multiple days of this trial, correct? Yes, LeBron replied. And on at least 2 occasions, you were seen speaking to individuals who have now been identified as jurors. Is that correct? I greeted people outside the building, he said carefully. It wasn't intentional contact, but it was contact. LeBron paused. It wasn't about the case. The attorney stepped forward. So you deny telling any juror that a guilty verdict would be bad for Diddy or bad for the culture? I never said that. The words hung in the air, brittle and fragile. Then came the exhibit. The prosecution presented security footage, still blurry, still unofficial, but clear enough to show LeBron and juror number 6 talking for nearly 40 seconds. In courtroom time, that's an eternity. What were you saying here? The attorney asked, pointing to the paused image on the monitor. LeBron looked at the screen. I don't remember. You don't remember? I talked to a lot of people, he said, his voice steady but eyes shifting. But not many people during a federal trial, with a juror on the steps of a courthouse. The courtroom was locked in a trance. Then came the second blow. Call records. The burner phone traced back to his driver. A pattern of calls. Quick, frequent, unexplained. LeBron's attorney jumped in and objected. These calls were never proven to be made by my client. The judge waved it off. We're not at the point of judgment. We are at the point of exposure. And right now, Mr. James, your proximity to this jury is disturbing at best, dangerous at worst. And the final question, the one that tracked LeBron's vote. Did you tell any juror, directly or indirectly, that their decision in this trial would affect your world outside this court? A pause. A long, suffocating pause. No, LeBron answered. But it didn't feel like truth. It felt like survival. This leaned forward, eyes burning with restraint here. This court will not be hijacked by cultural icons, no matter how beloved. If influence was used to steer this jury in any direction, that is a threat to the entire justice system. LeBron was dismissed. Didn't make eye contact with anyone as he left the stand. Not even did he. And as the door closed behind him, the courtroom remained still. No one dared exhale, because they all knew that testimony hadn't cleared anything. It had only made everything worse. The judges' chambers were no longer a place of deliberation. They had become a command center for crisis control. The trial, already teetering, was now on the edge of total collapse. And behind closed doors, the judge wasn't just reviewing evidence. He was reviewing the very integrity of the courtroom itself. Outside, the media had exploded. News anchors across the country were debating not Diddy's guilt or innocence, but whether LeBron James had just committed federal jury tampering. Social media was in meltdown. Hashtags were trending. Protesters and supporters were gathered in droves outside the courthouse, some waving free Diddy signs, others holding posters that read, "No one's above the law, not even LeBron." But inside those court walls, everything was cold, controlled, ready to detonate. The jurors returned to the box that morning under federal escort. They were no longer 12 anonymous citizens. They were now suspects in a cultural hurricane. And the first thing the judge said when he sat down wasn't a welcome. It was a warning. This is not a spectacle. This is a court of law. And anyone, even a juror, who breaches their duty will face consequences far beyond this case. Juror number 2 couldn't stop shifting in his seat. Juror number 6 stared ahead, glassy-eyed, disconnected from everything around him. The weight of what they had done or allowed was finally settling in. The prosecution stood, face grim. Your Honor, in light of Mr. James's testimony and the newly surfaced communications, we are filing a formal motion for jury dismissal and retrial. That was it.
Some good civil rights, but I can't match these two hard barbecues back to fire myself. First it's small, low and slow, stack high and turn it in, and that swap one, get out of here. Take it from a good firefighter. God's rights. Style and substance. Is it juicy Sierra? Or is your percent APR plus 26 original value of the Sierra 15 month?
The nuclear option. A retrial meant everything would start over. Witnesses were called. Testimony reread. Evidence re-entered. But it also meant weeks, months of progress destroyed. It meant opening the floodgates for LeBron's involvement to become the main focus of every legal debate for years. The defense team panicked. They objected fiercely, accusing the prosecution of exploiting a celebrity moment to distract from the evidence. But the judge wasn't split. His voice dropped to a level no one had heard before. You think I care about LeBron James' celebrity? You think I care about the cameras waiting outside? I care about one thing only. And right now, I can't promise anyone watching that it can. Then he turned to the jury. If any of you feel you cannot make a decision based solely on the evidence presented in this court, stand now. Tell me. No one moved, not at first. Then juror number 6's chair creaked as she stood. She didn't say a word. She just nodded once, then sat back down. The judge let the silence stretch, let the tension crawl up every wall of the room. We are on the verge of a judicial collapse, he finally said. And if this jury has been touched by influence, even once, this trial becomes a fraud. The gallery was stunned. No murmurs, no reaction. And then came the words that turned everything sideways. The judge announced an emergency evidentiary hearing, not about Diddy, not about the charges, but about jury integrity. A separate trial within the trial, one designed to dissect exactly how far LeBron's shadow had stretched into the courtroom. It was no longer about guilt. It was now about whether the jury ever had a chance to be honest at all. It was the moment no one could have imagined, not even in the wildest conspiracy theories. LeBron James, once hailed as the gold standard of professionalism, discipline, and leadership, was now seated directly across from a federal judge in a closed evidentiary hearing. No cameras, no lawyers speaking on his behalf. This time it was just LeBron, a microphone, and the question that could redefine everything he built. Did you influence the jury? He sat still, but something had changed. The calm, measured demeanor from his earlier testimony was gone. His hands were clasped tightly in front of him, his jaw clenched. The lights felt brighter now, the silence louder. The judge didn't ease it. Mr. James, in this hearing, you will answer all questions directly. You are no longer a character witness. You are a central figure in a federal inquiry. LeBron nodded slowly. The prosecution began. Let's talk about your interaction with juror number 6. You claimed it was accidental. Is that your final statement under oath? Yes. We have footage. 38 seconds of uninterrupted dialogue. Eye contact. Hand gestures. She listened. You leaned in. Still accidental? LeBron shifted, but said nothing. The prosecutor took a slow step forward. She's confessed, Mr. James. She admitted that you told her this trial was bigger than the evidence, that a guilty verdict would hurt more than just one man. Do you deny saying those words? He paused long and painful. Then, I don't remember saying that. But if I did, I didn't mean it as pressure. The room seemed to crack open in that moment. The judge leaned in, his voice cutting like ice. You're aware that even suggesting what a juror should think is criminal when done outside this court? LeBron nodded. I know now. Now, Mr. James, you're a global icon. You know exactly how powerful your words are. Silence again. And then, finally, the moment that shattered the courtroom's last solution. The prosecution presented a printout, a text message pulled from a secondary phone. It was traced to LeBron's assistant, sent during deliberation. It read, they're leaning out guilty. Keep the energy on. LeBron's got it. No more speculation. No more theories. A digital paper trail. LeBron looked at it, frozen. I didn't write that, he whispered. I didn't tell him to send that. But it came from your team, about a jury, in a federal trial. The prosecutor shot back. And now a witness has confirmed you told her how to lead. The judge slammed his hand on the desk. Enough. The gavel didn't come down. But the weight of the moment was louder than any word echo could deliver. The judge looked straight at LeBron. Whether you intended to or not, you crossed the line. And the damage, Mr. James, is now irreversible. You didn't just sit in that gallery. You bent the room with your presence. And then came the decision. Not a verdict for Diddy, but for the trial itself. The judge declared that due to compromised jury integrity, the case would be suspended pending further review. Not dismissed, not retried yet, but frozen. A courtroom in limbo, a verdict stolen by influence. And LeBron, head down, walked out of that room not as a champion, but as the man who broke the balance of justice with a whisper. As LeBron exited the courtroom that day, the weight of silence followed him like a shadow. No cheers, no boos, just a stunned stillness when everyone who watched one of the most untouchable figures in modern culture walk out not as a hero, but as a question mark. News spread like fire. LeBron James implicated in jury interference. Diddy trial frozen by celebrity scandal. Justice versus fame. Where do we draw the line? But inside the courthouse, the damage had already been done. The courtroom sat empty, abandoned mid-war. The jury had been officially disbanded, sent home under federal protection, with strict instructions to avoid all press. None of them spoke. Not a single juror gave a statement. Why would they? They had been caught in something much bigger than a case. They had been caught in power. Judge Halverson returned to Chambers to draft the one order that no judge ever wants to write. A ruling of compromised trial due to extrajudicial influence. It would go down in legal history, not because the case was unique, but because the influence was undeniable. LeBron had not been arrested, not yet, but an inquiry was open. He would now face his own legal nightmare, separate from Diddy's, one that could result in obstruction charges or worse, conspiracy to tamper with a federal jury. The NBA issued a single sentence. We are aware of the situation and gathering information. That was it. No defense, no support. The league, his kingdom, his fortress of untouchable success, suddenly silent. And as for Diddy, he sat alone in the defendant's chair long after the court was dismissed. Everyone had left, except him. His legal team asked him to move. He did. He stared straight ahead at the empty jury box. That's where the war had been fought and lost. Not by evidence, not by confession, but by silence, looks, whispers, and presence. Public reaction was a storm with no direction. Some defended LeBron, calling it a setup, a smear campaign. Others called for his prosecution. And the third group asked a far more haunting question. If this can happen in a courtroom, what happens in places where no one's watching? In the days that followed, protesters returned to the courthouse steps, not for Diddy, but for the idea of justice, for the right to a verdict unshaken by fame, for a system that shouldn't flinch when a celebrity walks in. And on the bench where LeBron once sat in the gallery, court officials placed a simple sign. This seat must remain empty during federal proceedings. It was a quiet memorial to a moment that changed everything. The trial wasn't lost because of evidence. It was lost because the scales of justice were outweighed by celebrity, and the world would never see that courtroom the same again.
I served in the U.S. Coast Guard. President Trump's tax cuts are important to veterans and working families. These tax cuts have saved us $1,500 a year. That's real money for real people. If Congress doesn't act, we'll get hit with a huge tax increase. After Biden's inflation, that's the last thing. Time is running out. Our leaders in Congress can't get distracted. They must act now and save our tax cuts.
I'm innocent. I killed nobody.
This is the indictment we've been waiting almost 3 decades for.
A decades-long wait for justice. ET uncovers the investigation into Tupac Shakur's murder investigation.
You know, I'm glad that that arrest was made. This person we always knew was in the car.
Tupac is always gonna be Tupac. He's always gonna be himself. You can't fault him for that.
The infamous cold case reigniting nearly 30 years after a drive-by shooting cut the rapper's life short.
And breaking just the last hour, we are learning that Las Vegas police have searched a home in connection to the murder of Tupac.
I wanna know who called it in.
Turn off my eyes.
There's been theories and speculation. A lot of people thought there would never be an arrest.
Hey, Keith, let me go for you. Come over. We are here today to announce the arrest of 60-year-old Dwayne Keith Davis, aka Keefy D, for the murder of Tupac Shakur.
While Keefy D didn't pull the trigger, police allege he was the shot caller. But to ABC News, Keefy calls himself a patsy.
Prove that I orchestrated this. You see it?
Well, you know you have a PR problem. A lot of people have an image about you. What would you like them to know about you in 1996, Tupac now?
That I'm a Gemini. Being a Gemini, I'm a classic case of a Gemini. On the night of September 7th, 1996, Tupac Shakur, along with Suge Knight, and members of their entourage came to Vegas to attend the Mike Tyson fight at the MGM Grand Garden Arena.
Very passionate, Gemini's, I can be calm, quiet, very into my work, and totally focused and totally disciplined and boring.
Perhaps Morningside lost some headlines about soaring record sales and court drama.
As we all know, Tupac Shakur was an artist who was signed with Death Row Records, and its CEO married Suge Knight, and that they had an ongoing feud with the Southside Compton Crips.
They don't have no evidence against me. Came to put me in Las Vegas.
I could be fun, but dangerous. Not only to other people, but to myself.
Members of the Southside Compton Crips, which included Dwayne Davis, along with his nephew Orlando Anderson, were also in attendance at the same event.
After the fight, hotel cams captured Tupac attacking Orlando.
Little did anyone know that it is this incident right here that would ultimately lead to the retaliatory shooting and death of Tupac Shakur.
I'm like a kid in a candy store. All this is new, I'm 25, you know what I mean? Got cash, everything's dreamed of, and it's just kind of hard and difficult to keep yourself from just pressing the gas down all the way.
Tupac and Knight left a black BMW. Police placed PPD and Orlando in a white Cadillac armed for retaliation.
At some point in time, as they were in the white Cadillac, Mr. Davis took the gun that he had obtained and provided it to the passengers in the rear seat of the vehicle. They located the black BMW. They pulled up near the passenger side of that vehicle and immediately began shooting at Mr. Knight and Mr. Shakur.
A wounded Knight sped from the hail of bullets to safety. For days, Pac fought for his life as his shooting sent shockwaves through the industry.
We are no closer tonight to being able to tell you who shot Tupac Shakur on the Las Vegas Strip or why.
He's been shot before, and lived through it. So hopefully, God will see him through this one.
Tupac was later transported to the University Medical Center and died approximately 6 days later on September 13th.
We lost the soldiers, man. Lost the warrior.
What is this?
I'm trying to bring back 1989. I was born in 1989, I was in jail, so now we out. We're trying to show prosperity and hope and future. This is why I could sit in jail for a year and not kill myself, so I can come out.
For something like this to happen, just struck me and the whole industry by storm.
I was thinking all the time, it could have been me. Could have been anybody, could have been you.
Anybody can be shot. Somebody walked up and shot John Lennon.
Being held against my will. I'm supposed to be out there enjoying my twilight. Y'all got my back. Y'all will see me through this.
Our detectives knew most of the information I just briefed on. We never had the necessary evidence to bring this case forward and present criminal charges.
Initial investigators were hindered by street code, aka no one was talking.
I'm really shocked, though. Nobody saw anything. Nobody knows what it is. That's the mixed thing is when you have professional bodyguards, and part of the time for lives, that they can't even give us an accurate description of the vehicle. From 1995 to today, have you ever ridden in a white Cadillac? You know, I own a white Cadillac,
Orlando was killed in Compton soon after this denial. KPD later named his nephew for Tupac's murder to police.
He was a good person. Very good person, good heart, everything. He was really a kid. What else happened?
So a longtime investigator on the case who interviewed the suspect said 14 years ago, they cut a deal with him where he gave info about the Tupac case, but avoided prosecution.
Mr. Davis's own words reinvigorated our case in 2018. Specifically, Dwayne Davis's own admissions to his involvement in this homicide investigation that he provided to numerous different media outlets.
They had already had all the evidence, dude. Otherwise, I would have said, they already knew everything.
Davis has been publicly bragging about this. According to investigators, they say that is not covered by their deal. They say he basically talked his way into prison.
Wow. Yeah.
I shouldn't have said nothing. You know what I'm saying? I shouldn't have said nothing. And I'm innocent, man.
And following execution of that search warrant, this case was presented to the grand jury, which ultimately led to Davis being indicted on charges of murder.
Justice has been delayed for quite some time, in spite of all the eyes, all the attention, despite the celebrity. I'm just braced for whatever's next, good or bad.
Here we go.
E.T. tracked the good and bad of Tupac's spotlight until the end.
I'm excited because I got a lot of attention on the cameras and no crime. I ain't do no crime. You know what I'm saying? It's so positive.
A long road of legal troubles leading to his fateful night in Sin City.
What do you think about all this attention?
They knew me a little while ago.
Tupac was a hitmaker at just 20 years old with a side hustle on the big screen.
What do you want from me?
It was good fly. The best part was kissing Janet Jackson.
She see more money in her life than she ever had.
It gives me a certain amount of freedom in my music and just in general as a young black male to have, the opportunity to do movies where I can get money and, get a certain spot in White House and my bills is very.
The bills included mounting legal fees, out-of-court settlements, and keeping up his hip-hop lifestyle.
I like thinking a revolutionary. My life's work to break free from the status quo.
In fact, disruption was sort of a tradition for the son of a Black Panther activist.
She was in jail, she was fighting me.
I, at some point, was trying to understand him as a growing, maturing young man, but at the same time, I'm his mother, and when Tupac was alive, he disturbed a lot of people.
It's important that I just put myself 100%, apply myself, and represent, the young black girl, whatever I do.
You do that. Because if you don't, me and you gonna have fun.
You tell me.
I just got the charges dropped in Atlanta. They had me on TV with shooting cops, and the charges were dropped.
Tupac reveling in a win for one of his many court sagas in the face of what he deemed institutional racism, reckoning with his success.
I just went platinum. That's all they wanted to make me be a gangster rapper because I was going platinum. Tupac.
What you saw in revolutions and inflation having come, clean trial warriors stand strong. We're making more because they're built in the system with impeachments and focus lawsuits. President Trump will stop their scheme and take America for them.
One night we had to prepare hundreds of travel sites at once. I like to do things myself. I can't trust anything else to do the job right. Yeah. That's one done.
You left me in for more than I. The lowest prices of international grocery stores. It's nothing.
Okay.
You know, I mean, sold 5 million records.
I never wanted to be a gangster. I'm a thug. But I'm a nice person. I want to survive. I want to make money. I want to be in business. I want to do it. But what's honest about the world is that no one's going to let me do that. So that's what thug is. But everybody just let me know. I'll be a nice person.
You know, I mean, Tupac is a capitalist. We all capitalists. But you get so successful, you know, sometimes it's time to turn it down. Arnold Schwarzenegger doesn't take his job home, you know.
I've been telling people I'm innocent. It sounds like a broken record. Maybe they'll believe me about the other stuff now. You know what I'm saying?
That proved harder for the next legal battle. In 1994, sexual assault charges threatened to put Pac away for years.
Why am I the only one in court right now? Why is the cameras all on me? I don't understand.
What do you think about the day after this court appearance? Pac was ambushed at a recording studio and shot 5 times. But surprising everyone, he was back at court the next day, severely injured, but in person to hear his guilty verdict. In both his 1994 attempted murder and killing 2 years later, the court of public opinion cast suspicion on Pac's friend turned rival Biggie Smalls, and that Boy Records founder did.
Celebrate what BIG stands for?
Do you
think Alfred was involved in the shooting?
Only they can answer that question.
5 later resurfacing Tupac's own suspicion of Biggie, who spent decades denying any role in Pac's demise, even amid his own years in the making indictment.
Biggie is due back in court Thursday, but could he also potentially face a new legal issue connected to the murder of Tupac Shakur? ET has learned Tupac's family has hired famed attorney Alex Spiro to investigate any possible link between Biggie and Tupac's 1996 drive-by shooting and death.
I believe so. I do believe so. I have proof. Yes, I am going to say grab the thug. That's because I came from the gutter, and I'm still here. I'm not saying I'm a thug because I want to rob you and rape you. I'm a businessman.
Tupac served 8 months of a 4-year sentence for that sexual assault verdict. He made bail during his appeal, with money fronted by Suge Knight and high school friend turned TV star Jada Pinkett Priest.
Pac and I never had a romantic dynamic. I just want to get that straight. But I also understand, like, you know, how could 2 people be so close? We were like that too. We were, you know, how come this doesn't work? But it just did.
How's it feeling here tonight? I mean, how long have you been out? And I was about 4 days. Really?
4 whole days. Feel real good. I mean, a week ago I was in my cell in a maximum security penitentiary.
Everything you changed, you think? How's that feel?
I'm the same person, but I got a better heart now. That's all.
Pac left prison preaching a brand new outlook, while also signing tonight's Death Row Records, a focal point of the East Coast West Coast rap team.
And the rivalry between the 2 coasts made 90s hip hop a cultural phenomenon, with Tupac and Biggie Smalls at the center.
Oh, I love the legacy. I love the
Jada's details were falling out with Pac over his troubling trajectory post-prison.
What did you think when his transition from how you knew him to the Death Row Pac?
You know, it was me pulling his coattails, like, hey, this ain't Nick, this ain't you, you know? But I also felt like his anger was being played on. It was a complicated time.
I don't know about change, I just grown. You know what I mean? Like, I might know not to walk on the floor because I might slip, but I don't know not to touch the electric socket and I get shocked. You know what I mean? So the only way you can learn is hands on. You know, sometimes that shock hurts, but sometimes you put your hand on something good like money or, you know, gold or reward or power, some good material or good movie. So taking that same chance that got you in trouble.
Pac spent his final weeks on sets and in the studio.
It's real hard. Your whole job is based on people like you. And when you get to this, you know, the same word everybody else lives there except for is magnified like 10 times. So they just do all of that, all the things that normal people do, just 10 times harder. Life is funny, yeah. Somehow I don't think this is my parents' dream for me.
There's no way to put the right on. You're trying, but you know, you stop there to walk away from being the gangster rapper that get him anyway. Somebody who's out and out really always trying to do it. So.
And breaking in just the last hour, we are learning that Las Vegas police have searched the home in connection to the murder of Tupac.
Well, Well, I know there's been many people who did not believe that the murder of Tupac Shakur was important to this police department. I'm here to tell you that was simply not the case.
You need to make this be a reminder that the charge of murder does not have a statute of limitations.
I do one thing, it comes out 3 times. I would put a guy on everybody from the president to Biggie Smalls in the news, you know what I mean?
He has no ego. You guys even humble. Really? Honestly.
Just 6 months after Pop's death, Biggie was killed too.
First time on my shit, that has to stop, you know? I mean, with Tupac and Biggie, I mean, it's just, where are we going?
I think our message is pretty simple. We're mothers, we're never alone, and that we're united with other mothers in the same situation. We are in pain, but because of all that love that surrounded us, that crouched us, we can able to stand firm and go on with our lives.
I love Miss Wallace because Miss Wallace is a mother who's lost her child. When my son died, right from the beginning, I always said to people, continue to say, I'm not the only one. I am not the only mother who's lost a child. And I have deep compassion for everyone who's lost a child. It's an awful club to belong to.
Biggie's murder still unsolved. Davis was also interviewed as a person of interest in a small shooting in 2009.
I think the storyline and all that, right?
He just gets out and does it. You know, I should be using past tense, but I just can't. It's just too unbelievable that he's not around.
Think about your 5 mistakes. My 5 mistakes were on the news. You know what I mean? Everybody has 5 mistakes. They did maybe 3, maybe 4.
You had 5,
5.
10,
I got 5. I got 5 real mistakes. And then I had 5 mistakes off of the rumors of the 5 real mistakes that I made.
Clark County Grand Jury has indicted Dwayne Keith Davis with 1 count of open murder with use of a deadly weapon with a gang enhancement.
If convicted, KPD is likely to spend the rest of his days behind bars.
I'm innocent. I ain't killed nobody, never did, ever killed nobody.
I'm glad that arrest was made. This person we always knew was in the car. I want to know who called the hit.
The family has reached out to my office. We've been in communication with them. We understand that they are welcoming this news.
It sucks. The whole affair sucks. But we want justice for Bob.
It has often been said, justice delayed is justice denied. Justice will be served in the murder of Tupac Shakur.
While it's unknown what might have come from Pac, the life he talked and walked promised more career highs and controversy.
The core of Pac never changed.
He's always talking about he was going to get his light, he was going to shine.
I do something. A lot of it always feels like to be a father.
So you're thinking about that, or that's way down?
Way down the line. Just wanted to do a little glimpse. I haven't got the full dosage by far. Just the next one now. Lately, I've been feeling like my next one now.
So you're gonna do a romantic comedy person? Are you gonna see it? Serenading the girl on your knees?
I got working on my little production company, movie production company. A lot of good things happening. So I'm just, if I say it right now, the way my life has been going, it all falls through. But if I said it, you go, oh, that's really nice. But just give me a month, just so I can lock it down. And I tell everybody it's good stuff. I just want to push the envelope and work. My thing is that if you don't ever go outside of the boundaries, you never change anything, we will never begin anything, we never start anything. We'll just keep talking about the people who did it. They told us not to go outside of it. That's just like me telling Christopher Columbus that the world is flat. I was trying to go outside of the boundaries. Sometimes it's a fact. Sometimes it's negative.
I actually have to take responsibility for all of the bad because I take responsibility for the good. And I do that because my son challenged me to do that. He said if I was going to take responsibility for his good stuff, then I had to take responsibility for that. So I don't mind.
Okay. hear from. Whose phone is on my thing? What is all this? Don't know. Hey, come here. Who dumped that stuff out over there? Why? Go down there before you stuff it. Go get your bag before you do anything.
Okay.